Are we finally welding something? Or is this just another episode of the Kiwi Dazz Talks Welding podcast?
Oh, we're welding, and I've got a couple of tricks up my sleeve, or rather, clamped to the steel. In this video, I'm finally putting that right angle jig that I built in a previous video to work. I'm welding up the gate frames perfectly square and true, on my slanted, uneven driveway, with no welding table and very amateur skills. But before I make the frames, I'm welding the hinges on. Yeah, it sounds backwards, I know. Either I'm a genius or a certified lunatic.
I know which one I'm betting on, Daz.
Hinges are the business end of the gate. If they're off, the whole thing's gonna be off. So I'm welding them first, straight to the post and stiles before building the frame.
Ooh, daring, dangerous Daz.
Deadly accurate. Now you might be wondering, why start with the hinges? Well, the standard way is to build the frames, install the posts, prop up the gates, and tack the hinges in place.
Sounds smart. So naturally you're not doing that?
Correct. I want to take the gates and the post to the powder coater like I did on my last project. Super fast, affordable, and no runs. Once the posts are concreted in, you can't really just throw them in the back of the minivan.
You think?
Also, these gates are quite big. 1.5 meters wide by 1.8 meters high. That's about 5 by 6 feet. Trying to prop them in place while tacking the hinges on sounds kind of like a one-man circus act.
You've never let common sense stop you before.
But the hinges have to align perfectly for a smooth swing. So welding them while the parts are free and manageable, now that just makes good sense.
Oh, now he's making sense. Quick, someone write that down.
All right, let's get it done, eh? These are all the pieces. These are my two 4mm thick wall 75 by 75 posts. These are all 25 by 25 2mm wall thickness tube. These are the 4 verticals, these are the 4 horizontals, these are the 2 diagonals, and those are the 4 diagonals that run center up to the corners. Here are the hinge pins, 4 hinge sockets, or whatever you call those. So these will get attached to the gate frame and these will get attached to the posts. Anyway, enough chitter chatter.
With Kiwi Dazz getting it done, eh?
So here I'm just welding a couple of caps onto the top of the posts, tacking them in place first and then welding them off once I'm happy with them. Once I've finished welding on the caps, I get out my grinder with a nice aggressive flat disc and start grinding the welds. It takes a bit of work to grind this nice and smooth. Because I'm a total amateur welder, after I've finished grinding it smooth, I can see that I've kind of haven't put enough weld in and I've got a few voids here and there. So then I go ahead and put a little bit more weld in so that I can then grind it back once again. In the end, I think this was worth the extra effort. It came out looking really nice. A little bit of back and forth from the welder to the grinder, but it really paid off and gave a... Here I am marking out where the hinges are going to go on the posts. I had to do a little bit of working out on my computer to work out exactly where they would go. They need to go towards one face of the posts, not right in the middle. And the reason for this is that because there's timber attached to the metal and that is on one side of the metal, this just means that that's going to get in the way and hit the post if I was to put the hinge in the middle. Kind of difficult to explain. You might be able to see it once I finish building the gates. But essentially I wanted the gates to be able to swing both inwards and outwards, and I had worked out that if I got these hinges just in the right location, it would mean that I could do that. Now I'm marking out the hinges on the metal stile for the gate. As you can see, it's so much easier that this is just one piece of metal rather than being the whole gate. It's also nice and easy to weld on the hinges like this too. Here I am checking out the operation of the hinge and measuring that it's parallel to the post. This first one came out perfectly. Whoops, I tacked one hinge part on the wrong side of the mark. Rookie move.
Classic Daz.
But that's why you tack first, so that you can fix stuff-ups before they become forever. Quickly grind it off, reposition it, tack it on again, and the crisis is averted.
Ooh, it swings. Alert the media.
Now that I'm confident that I've got this hinge operating all nice and smoothly, now I'm putting just a ton of weld on these hinge parts to make sure that they're nice and robust. I've got to say, I'm pretty happy with my results at this stage. All my welds are holding really nicely, and this hinge is just operating perfectly. Back on the grinder, tidying up all the welds. Now, this is my right angle welding jig. I built it in a previous video, but today it's really going to earn its keep. It holds everything square while I tack. No triple checking with a square, just clamp, weld, done. This was my first time using the jig, and I really have to admit it, I did have a little bit of trouble working out how to clamp it up, but once I got the hang of it, it was a real dream. The only problem I really had was working off this tiny little table. Later on in the video, I moved to the ground, and actually that was way easier. But yeah, once you got it all clamped up, then you just simply tack that weld in place and unclamp it. It's pretty simple. Every joint is beveled by about 30 degrees so that the weld sits nice and deep, clean and stronger.
And 100% more sparks. Let's be honest, you're in it for the fireworks.
Check out my video on building the jig. I've got a lot of tips there on using the jig, but as you can see here, because the metal is small, I'm putting it on the inside of the jig. If the metal was larger, I would locate that on the outside of the jig. You can use it either. As you can see here, I'm actually using the outside of the jig. Now, I do say in my video that you shouldn't do this for the small pieces because the radius of the jig gets in the way, but what you can do is use some little metal pieces as spacers, and then you can successfully do that as well. I had to do that because I'd already welded that hinge on and it was kind of getting in the way of the jig. Once I'd finished building the frame with the jig, then I just welded all the corners off more completely. Oh dear, what can I say? Such a klutz. Just always be careful when doing DIY. It can be sometimes a little dangerous. I eyeballed the frames for square, looked bang on. Then I ran 2 pieces of fishing line diagonally corner to corner. They met and touched in the middle, perfectly flat.
Fishing line? What is this, Gate Build Beach Edition?
It works. I'll show you that trick in the next video after I weld the cross braces in.
It still doesn't look like a gate, Daz.
Patience is a virtue, Shazz. We're getting there. After a while of struggling to work on my small table, I thought, hey, why don't I just work on the driveway? Oh my god, I wish I'd done this sooner. This was so much better. This jig is smarter than I am. Dead square every time. I've used magnets, clamps, even gravity. Nothing comes close. Perfect square corners, perfectly flat, even on my wonky and uneven driveway. I thought I needed a $1,000 welding table. Turns out, I just needed this jig.
What? You didn't just buy another expensive tool to just use once?
If you want square true weld ups without the headache, build this jig. Seriously, links in the description and pinned comment. I gotta apologize, I didn't quite film this as well as I'd hoped. Yeah, so I found out that my garage door's a little bit low to be walking past with my welding helmet up. Now that I've finished welding up the frames, it's time to grind them up with the flat disc. Oh my god, what a lot of grinding. I did it on the floor, I did it leaning against the table, I ground and ground and ground. That's the first frame done, and now I'm on to the next. Like I said before, I'm a pretty amateur welder. After I'd ground it all up, I realized that I could probably just put a little bit more weld on these hinges, and there were a few little places where I hadn't just got quite enough weld on my corners. So I'm just touching all those up, and then I'll be back to grinding them off in a minute. There's often some places like internal corners on your welding project where you can't get to with a flat disc on a grinder. This is where I'm using this die grinder to get in there and remove the excess material. It's all quite a lot of work, but I'm really happy with how this is all coming out. Hinges on, frames built, everything's square and flat and jigged, jiggled, jiggy.
So when do we actually see a gate?
Coming up on the next episode, metal braces to prevent sag and a bunch of metal cleats to attach the timber cladding.
Cross braces to stop sagging? You got any of those for me?